we need the top team to be at the best of our colleagues, not who's friends with who, not who voted which way in the referendum, not which faction or group they happen to be in. We need the very best of our colleagues. I'm not part of that. That's not me. I'm not pitching for a job. But I owe it to the country, I owe it to my fellow local residents that we have our strongest performance. And I'll give you an example. Now, Jeremy Hunt's ruled himself out. I was surprised when he was made as the Chancellor on Friday. But as somebody who is a successful businessman in his own right, he has come forward, he's taken decisive action to respond to the changing circumstances, and he steadied the markets. Now, that matters. That matters because that's people's pensions. That matters because that is people's mortgage rates. And that matters because it's about credibility and our ability to raise the sufficient funding for our public services. And eventually, when things settle back down, to make sure we can start cutting taxes again for hardworking families back in Swindon.
Now,
I want...
On that point, Justin, sorry to interrupt, but we hear this afternoon Labour explicitly calling for a general election. We hear the Liberal Democrats calling for a general election as the only way out of this. Why, given what we have been through, how far we are away from that 2019 manifesto, how many prime ministers we've been through since, how many changes of direction we've seen, why should you guys still be in government? Why should we not go back to the country at this point in time? If we're putting the country first, not the party, why should we not have a general election?
Look, understood. And as you know, as you would expect the sun to come up in the morning, of course, opposition parties call for elections. We'd be doing exactly the same in opposition. That's just how politics works. But there isn't an appetite. Labour have been voting with us on the major issues in the last 2 weeks, and interestingly, as they're now starting to come under greater media scrutiny, they are finding that difficult. And you'd only have to get Brenda from Bristol on the phone, and she would be screaming if there was a prospect of another general election. And look, yes, times have changed since 2019. We've had COVID, we've had Brexit, we've had a leadership contest. What people are wanting is stability and calmness. And that means, and this is my point about us being grown up and being pragmatic, we don't need a 6-week prolonged beauty contest. This isn't about egos, it isn't about individuals. It is
so
about
it should be up to you Tory MPs are the ones who get to choose.
And making sure they're all part of what we do going forward. That is what we owe to the country.
The final one for me. Several of our listeners have already got in touch in the last hour since this news saying, bring back Boris. I can't see that happening personally. No, I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, because you were the last man standing supporting him in terms of the Wiltshire MPs.
Yeah, I was one of the last standing with Boris. I was a Boris supporter, but he lost the support of the party. I'd be surprised. I'd be very, very surprised.
You and me both.
There are some colleagues who are calling for it, but I think, I was a supporter, but I suspect that vote is probably, it's not now. Not now. I'd be surprised.